Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and it is so good you could join us today. We often think of the state of New Jersey as a state divided. Take, for instance, pork roll and Taylor ham. If you know, you know. Being sandwiched between New York and Philadelphia, the issues of North and South Jersey are unique and often influenced by their proximity to these major cities. Enter South Jersey Forward, a non-profit think tank and advocacy group formed with the goal of addressing key issues in the southern part of the state. Founder Michael Solman is standing by. First up, though, New York City is close to approving a master plan that would charge motorists who drive in congested areas a toll. It's called congestion pricing, and that could really hit the pocketbooks of New Jersey commuters. Robert Berman is CEO of artificial intelligence roadway technology company Rekor Systems, and he joins us now to break it down. Robert, it's good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yep. So first, let's define congestion pricing. What exactly is this?
So congestion pricing started back in middle 70s, believe it or not, in Singapore, with the idea of creating a tax to dissuade drivers from going into very congested urban areas like cities like New York and others. And it's worked well there, and then it expanded into Europe. London, Stockholm, I think Milan and Italy has it. Now we're talking about it here in the US. New York and San Francisco both have been exploring it, and I think New York is now rolling it out.
Yeah, I mean, but a lot of people, they don't have an option. They've got to get into the city for work. So it kind of feels like, you want to, I get it, you don't want everybody all at the same time, but charging a toll for it seems kind of wrong.
Well, look, we'll have to leave that to the policymakers. So,
right. All right. Well,
we do have lots of tolls, right?
Yeah.
Right. But I would say that there are better ways to do it because we're making use of 20th century technology in New York to do that, and that's awfully expensive. And if we use 21st century technology, well, maybe it wouldn't hurt the pocketbooks of the commuters so hard, right?
Right. Well, so let's talk a little bit about what exactly your company does. Like many people have the Easy Pass that is installed on your car, so when you go through a toll, boom, you get paid. What exactly does your company do?
Well, so Easy Pass is an RFID tag, and you use that when you drive through a toll, so it becomes a cashless option. What we do is we make use of existing infrastructure, other cameras that may be out there, and other roadway sensors, and deploy AI to do many of the things that we do today for tolling, like cashless tolling and so forth. But it can be used for so much more, from public safety to easing congestion on the roads without having to go out and build these vastly expensive, infrastructure projects and so forth. It's new, so people are starting to realize that it's an option, and I think it's fantastic because it can save us from all the clutter we have out there on the roadways. There's more and more of it every day, right?
Right. So now, is your company working with state agencies in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania? Because, like I said, a lot of drivers already have the Easy Pass. Is what you do, is it going to be a little bit different, or would you need to have both? Can you just talk about how it works?
Well, some of our technology is used in tolling. It's used as a backup to the RFID tag because, sometimes those things fall off your windshield and put them back upside down. They don't work exactly right. So many tolling authorities use vehicle recognition as a way of validating an RFID tag. But there are other things coming. States are talking about road usage charges, right? For years, we've been funding our highways and roads with gasoline excise taxes. And if you think about electric vehicles, they don't buy gas, so therefore there's no money for, taxes to fund roads. So we're starting to see states think about use charges and so on and so forth. So I think that's where things may be headed. Yeah. But our tech is used in public safety, it's used in law enforcement, it's used in traffic management centers to give folks that work there situational awareness of things on the road that could be used to prevent anything from, crash zone to just situations and incidents that happen, and saving time and saving money and saving lives.
Yeah. Well, do you know, and this may not be in your area, do you know how much drivers might be charged to enter Manhattan? And it's below 60th Street under this congestion pricing plan.
My understanding is it's below 60th Street. I'm not sure what the program is and how they're charging, but I'm sure they're going to have carve outs for people that live there and do things for commuters and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to see, it's not going to be one price fits all type of thing.
Right, right.
But I do think they could have made use of existing infrastructure and save, look, the less cost that the system, is, then lower the cost to the users, right? So they're going to spend nearly $500 million deploying a system there over the next couple of years, where they could have made use of existing technology that's already out that would have saved the taxpayers a ton of money.
And in theory, the whole point of the congestion pricing, aside from getting people to avoid the area, is also so you can fund road work, infrastructure projects, and the area really it does cost so much to maintain that. You mentioned that there are certain infrastructure, certain things that are already in place. Can you be a little bit more specific?
Sure, there are cameras all over cities like New York that could have been used, as opposed to putting up gantries and using microwave readers for RFID tags. Again, that's 20th century technology, and other sensors that can be tapped into, and AI is able to adapt to all of that. And that's what we do. We bring in, I think, more than 70 different sources of information into our platform called Rekor One. Everything from connected vehicle data to ground truth data from roadways, sensors, our own sensors, CCTV cameras that traffic management centers have out there, and a whole host of other things, right? But when you're dealing in tremendous amounts of data, and it takes AI to sort it out. But at the end of the day, it's a good thing because it's less expensive, makes the roadway safer, and again, you don't have to build these massive infrastructure projects to make our roads better.
Yeah, you mentioned that you are currently working, you have other partnerships already within law enforcement. So can you give us some examples of what you already do, what is already in place? Because like you mentioned, so much is already available. It's getting it all into a system, if I'm hearing you right, and trying to make it a little bit more succinct, that it's easier to understand and to properly process the information.
Yes, so Rekor's roots were in public safety, using vehicle recognition technology for law enforcement, catching people that have warrants and things like Amber Alerts and so on and so forth. And it's proven to be a force multiplier for law enforcement across the U.S. And now we've moved on using it for other roadway intelligence. An example might be we can tell the real-time emissions of the traffic that's crossing our interstates and roads, also the weight in motion and things. It sounds relatively mundane, but that's how our planners figure out what they're going to do with the roads over the next 20 years. It depends on traffic patterns. Okay. So, and we're also keeping workers off the interstates mostly, because what we can do, we do from the side of the road. We don't have to dig the road up, so we're not creating congestion and by itself of just deploying technology, which again, a lot of the 20th century legacy technology requires massive infrastructure, construction projects and so on and so forth. And you don't need to do those things today.
Right. I think that where you have people is and how you're talking about this is that you're not going to add to the congestion, because if you are traveling in this area, you've got to add so much time onto your commute in addition from just the regular mileage, depending on the time of day, depending on accidents and such. So can you talk a little bit about, when you talk about congestion pricing, downside is, you've got to pay more money, but what is the upside of what you're studying on actual traffic congestion and not remedying it, or maybe?
Well, it's a really good question, Laura. Think of what we do when we see that we have a congested roadway over time. Right away, the planners start thinking about, well, we need to add a lane, and that could take upwards of a decade and cost lots of money. And adding the lane itself creates work zones and congestion, and by itself. What if you could have AI regulate speed in real time by using what we call soft infrastructure, which is, say signage, saying, look, if you drive at this speed for the next 5 miles, you're not going to run into, a dead stop, right? And that makes a hell of a lot more sense than building, a massive infrastructure project. Look, we really believe at Rekor that code is the new concrete. And if you think about our roadways, what we have is we have vehicles that are getting smarter every day. They're connected, they're producing all kinds of data, and our roads are dumb. right? So it's time to put a digital layer of infrastructure over the roadways. And I think both the federal government as well as the states have been giving this a lot of thought over the last several years, especially with the infrastructure bill that was passed recently. And that's what you're going to start seeing. So the use of technology and software and soft infrastructure and IoT nodes where everything's connected is going to make it a lot easier for us to transition into the future.
Yeah, that's interesting. Code is the new concrete.
Yep.
What do you say to people who might push back and say, I don't like the privacy issues that could be breached here. I don't like you knowing how fast my car is going. Like, how do you all address those issues?
Well, if you think about what we do, other than in law enforcement, where our systems are being used by law enforcement agencies that have the right to that PII data, your license plate, make, model, color, those things. That's one thing. But everything else that we do, we take that data and we hash it so we can see a vehicle, but then we anonymize it, right? So we have no idea what the license plate is or any information about the registered owner. We're just tracking an object. But that gives us the ability to do all the things we're talking about. So I think we've worked hard to make sure that we've addressed the privacy issues. So as going forward, people don't have to think about that.
You are talking about becoming more efficient, telling the cars how fast you can go, and if you do this, you'll get here. It almost sounds like perhaps maybe what some aircraft have when they're flying, a little bit more complicated even.
If you think of what we're doing is we're building an operating system for the roadways, much in the same way computers have an operating system, right? You use Windows, and that gives you the ability to navigate your computer and the internet. And the roadways need a digital layer of infrastructure that create an operating system so that you can plug all these things into it as we move forward, because no one really knows where this is going to end up, when we're going to have autonomous vehicles or connected vehicle corridors or flying taxis or whatnot. But we do know that all these things today can be connected through the Internet of Things, and you can use AI to manage this massive amount of data. And that's what we've been focused on at Rekor. And I think that a lot of it is yet to be seen, but it's evolving. But we're finding good use cases for our technology every day, and it's being used, and it's very helpful.
I see in my social media feed sometimes the driverless cars, and I don't know if I'd be that brave as to get into one just yet. But Robert, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us to explain congestion pricing and what exactly it is that you do as well.
Yep, Laura, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, good to see you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
South Jersey Forward is a nonprofit think tank and advocacy organization that is working to help solve problems in the southern part of our state. Joining me now is the founder, Michael Suleiman. Michael, welcome to the show. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Laura. Pleasure to be here.
First of all, just define for us, what is South Jersey Forward and what is your mission?
So South Jersey Forward is a nonprofit think tank, a nonpartisan think tank and advocacy organization. It's really committed to solving and cracking down some of the big issues facing the southern part of the state, south of 195. And my big thing is it's not about milquetoast ideas or boilerplate issues and solutions, really micro-targeting some really concrete issues and troubles that we have in southern New Jersey, and bringing smart people, a lot of people smarter than me, together to have some great ideas, solutions to present to lawmakers and policymakers. Say, hey, here's some solutions, go implement them.
Yeah, so why did you form South Jersey Forward? What was happening to where you said, this organization needs to exist?
So I'm 33. For my entire, look older than I am, my entire life, really, we've heard the same issues. Atlantic City needs to get more diverse economically. We can't be reliant on casino gaming. We've got to help Cumberland County get out of poverty. Issues that we've heard literally for 30, 40, 50 years have not been solved. And frankly, it just bore out of a frustration from me of, hey, let's solve some of these problems. I know there's a time for politics, and certainly I wear some political hats, but forget the politics. Let's deal with solutions. And look, I don't care if you're a DNR or an independent. If you got a good idea to solve a problem, give me a call. I want to hear about it.
Yeah. All right. So can you talk a little bit about some of the issues that you are focusing on? What's on your radar, the big issues in South Jersey?
So the first issue we hit on is housing in Atlantic City. We really want to target a micro issue that really we could sink our teeth into. And certainly Atlantic City has a significant housing problem. Nearly 75% of residents are renters. That is unsustainable. There is a serious lack of quality housing stock in the city, which we need to facilitate. And one of the main recommendations we made in our first report is creating a tax abatement program similar to Philadelphia's. Remember, Philadelphia was a mess in the 90s, and Mayor Rendell at the time and the city council came together. You had an explosion of development, explosion of energies and happenings in the city. We want to create that in Atlantic City. And one of the things we propose is a tiny half penny tax on casino gaming revenue to fund this program, which I know people say, oh, we don't like tax increases. But look, the casinos have gotten the pilot, they've gotten sports betting, they've gotten internet gaming. They could give back a little bit to help the residents of Southern New Jersey and revitalize Atlantic City.
Yeah, so how would South Jersey Forward then work to improve the lives of those living in Atlantic City, living in Cumberland County, where the poverty rate is so high?
So, for example, we just put out a report, which I would encourage you to read, southjerseyforward.org. We're going to have future research and roundtables on that. One of the things I'd like to do in the future is actually take some of the stuff in a report, put it in a legislative form, and give it to state lawmakers in the governor's office. Say, hey, here's a bill, edit it, take it, pass it, but here it is. We did the work for you. Go implement it. So you really got to make it convenient and easy for lawmakers and policymakers to implement. You can't just say, here's what I think, go do it. You actually have to be a partner. And same thing, too. Obviously, look at the latest roundtable we did on local media in South Jersey, which frankly stinks. How can we have tangible solutions so that in Atlantic City, a Vineland, a Millville, a Bridgeton, a Camden City can get more reliable news coverage? And that's a statewide problem, but certainly we want to focus on South Jersey, and in particular, historically disadvantaged communities.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that, because you did hold a roundtable recently where you were looking to reach out to media. And, the nature of New Jersey is we are stuck between the Philadelphia media market and the New York media market. And so many stations don't even have a New Jersey bureau reporter anymore. So what did you talk about? What did you find out? Were there some connections made? Can you just discuss that?
So I didn't realize how bad the problem is. I mean, you saw Gannett has taken an axe to newsrooms like at the Vineland Daily Journal, at the Courier Post. The Press of Atlantic City has gone to 3 days a week print, and they're going to mail it to you. So your day old news will be day and a half old news. So that's a big problem. But it really kind of honed in on our panelists, really made the good point. The advertising model for media is broken right now. And there was discussion, should you have a paywall? Should you not have a paywall? How do you monetize this? So the way that news organizations make money and advertise is broken. We need to fix that. And maybe it is allowing these companies to transition to a nonprofit business model. Maybe it is kind of the micro-targeting like Tap Into does, where you have kind of little pockets of news sources in all these towns instead of one big conglomerate like the Press or the Courier Post. Maybe it's tax incentives to help folks become journalists and get into that program to subsidize, frankly, that industry. Maybe it's news organizations like yours that really are filling a void. I think we're at a point now where kind of news is going to be fragmented. The idea of you tune into Walter Cronkite or you turn to this newspaper for all your news, I think it's over. I think we've got to account for that reality in South Jersey.
Right. I mean, there is a definite market that watches TV. There's a definite market that goes to social media. And I think everybody is struggling to try and figure out not only, where are people watching and consuming, but they're also having trouble even just validating, consider the source. Is this information correct? So no doubt social media can be a blessing and curse, I'm sure.
I think social media, it's problematic with some local news organizations or local news in general, pardon me. Because if you don't have a reporter covering a city council meeting or a mayor's press conference, then who fills the void? It's these Facebook groups, it's Twitter, it's Instagram. And a lot of times you read from neighbors and residents, it's either incorrect, biased, not accurate. And then you kind of, what's the phrase? The truth can't even put its pants on by the lie going around the world in 80 seconds. So, you have a situation where there's no coverage. And when there's no coverage, not only is there bad info getting out there, but also there's a whole lot of shenanigans by, frankly, policymakers and politicians who don't have that watchful eye over.
Well, and then another thing that's coming to mind, you're mentioning policymakers. You used to have former Assembly Speaker Jack Collins. You had the former Senate President Steve Sweeney. They are South Jersey. So those were some very powerful voices for the past 20 years. That's not there anymore. So can you talk a little bit about the lack of that or that void that with them not being the legislature, being out there discussing issues specific to South Jersey? the void that they've left?
Yeah, look, so I'll preface that South Jersey Forward is a nonprofit and nonpartisan, but I will say that it's certainly important for every region of the state to have advocates in Trenton fighting for dollars, resources, cloud influence, etc. And certainly not having South Jersey folks in high leadership positions has hurt. Certainly you have the Assembly Majority Leader Lou Greenwald, who is from Southern New Jersey, and you have legislators on both sides, many of whom actually voted, for example, the governor's budget and for property tax relief recently. So I think you can fill that void, but I think a lot of it is just the people rising up and fighting for their communities. And we should have there should be a North Jersey Forward, a Central Jersey Forward, and a South Jersey Forward. I think good public policy is not immune to imaginary lines, but given us in south of 195, we need a little bit of tender love and care. That's what I hope this think tank and advocacy organization will take care of.
Yeah, because a lot of people do think of North Jersey and South Jersey, but there is Central New Jersey. I live in Central New Jersey.
There is.
Yeah, so can you talk a little bit about how South Jersey Forward collaborates with other organizations and stakeholders to achieve some of your goals?
So it's funny, just putting it out there when I first started, I said, hey, if you have some research ideas or topics, shoot me a text, give me a call, email me, DM me, love to hear it. And just the breadth of people's ideas, even amongst my friends, is just fascinating. For example, somebody reached out to me actually up in Bergen County about the role that blockchain technology could have for local governments. And it's such a fascinating thing, which frankly, I know nothing about. So it's interesting, all these different concepts and ideas that are real practical solutions. I don't want the pie in the sky. My thing is ambitious yet realistic. Yeah. And even some organizations, local media. We had a lot of feedback from local media folks on, hey, you missed this, you missed that. We're probably going to do another local media roundtable, and maybe we'll include folks from your organization there in the future. But we're open for business. If you have a good idea, we want to hear about it. But my thing is, you can't just complain. Let's actually complain first, but now let's have some solutions.
Right. So, as your role as South Jersey Forward, plays in advocating for policies that benefit Southern New Jersey, how do you engage with the community to ensure that you are being responsive to local needs?
Well, I think virtual roundtables, virtual in person, are critical. We did that. We did our first one back in December with folks in Atlantic City about their housing needs and public safety needs. I think certainly social media is a big tool in terms of hearing feedback, communication, doing public events. It's got to be a two-way street. We got to, if we talk less and listen more, we can find out some pretty good ideas and solutions. So really just talking to folks. I encourage folks, email us, text us, call us, southjerseyforward.org. Even if you say, Suleiman, your ideas stink, I got something better, I'll take it. No pride of authorship here, Laura. No pride of authorship.
So you put it out there. Just what comes back, don't hold me accountable for that. So far, what kind of impact do you think that you've had so far since its inception? How long have you been around?
So just the last couple months, actually, relatively new. I think we publicly announced this in May. But I think our housing report really has set the tone, because this all started with, there were two, Atlantic City, Bader Field, there were two big housing projects talked about on the Bader Field site in Atlantic City for housing. Frankly, I had doubts about both. Neither one of them focused on luxury housing. So we talked about really middle-class owner-occupied housing. So I think that's a great way where we kind of are driving the conversation. Hey, policymakers, let's focus on this thing we're not talking about, not this shiny new stuff over here. Let's talk about some real stuff. So I think that's the value of any think tank, is really shining light on issues that, frankly, the media or others aren't focusing on. And frankly, what media is so important, we don't have the media to look at some of these things anymore, which is really sad.
Yeah, and you mentioned so much has changed about Atlantic City, and not necessarily for the better. So many casinos are going out of business, but it still is $3 billion in tourism. So it's still, but there's a lot, that you don't want to go because it's not safe, and half the stuff is closed.
Well, and I think economic development is a critical thing. Certainly, promoting the image of clean and safe. I mean, I think there's some parts of Atlantic City that are very, very safe. It just, if the perception that it's not safe, you've got a problem. I think the police departments do a great job. Frankly, they're understaffed, horribly understaffed, and I think the state needs to take a look at that. But, the air show's coming up August 16th. You're going to have 500,000 people in the city. So Atlantic City has a lot of good stuff going. There's some not so great stuff we have to work on, but still nearly a $3 billion gaming industry.
Yeah. And are you focusing on other issues like environmental concerns? You're along the shore, air pollution, people talk about rising sea levels. Are you addressing issues like that, or is it more business right now?
Well, right now we're looking at somewhat economic development issues. We're open to whatever. I mean, I think this really wants to be a grassroots-driven organization. If there's a need to research some topics and do papers and white papers, we'd love to do it. My thing is I don't want to replicate what other groups are doing. There's certainly other groups, for example, that are really documenting the effects of climate change on coastal communities like Avalon, Stone Harbor, Atlantic City, Ocean City. So we don't want to step on their toes. This isn't doing this just to get the organization out there for the sake of getting the name out there. We want real concrete solutions. So if another organization is doing good work, let them keep doing it. But certainly, whenever you're talking about economic development, you have to take into effect the rise of climate change and sea level rise, because that's going to affect where you can build.
Right. And final thoughts: if people want to get a hold of you, want to get involved, want to talk to you, how do they do so?
SouthJerseyForward.org. Please look at our research, read our reports, view our roundtables, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Well, I guess it's X now, right? It's not
X,
Twitter anymore.
right? It's X now, yes. And Threads.
TikTok.
And Threads.
And Threads. Oh, we got to get on Threads. God bless Mark Zuckerberg. But really get in touch with us. We want to hear the ideas. If there's an issue in your county, even if you don't live in South Jersey, but you visit down here, you vacation, this thing bothers me, send it to us. I'd love to hear the ideas and get some folks smarter than me to work on those solutions.
Okay, Mike Solomon, South Jersey Forward. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, Laura. Look forward to talking again soon.
Yeah. And that will do it for today. Thank you so much for watching New Jersey Politics. I am Laura Jones, and we look forward to seeing you back here next time.